Okay, Subodh, you're on mute, right?
Yes, I
Okay,
have.
great. Okay, great. So everyone, apologies for the delay. It was involuntary, but let's get going on this now. A quick thing, if you have any questions, please post those on the chat window. My curating team is looking at those questions and will share with me towards the end that we can ask. So just that the flow of the webinar is maintained. My agenda of the day is to quickly introduce the speakers of the day uh, and then give a little bit of highlight of what e-Zest does in this space, and then straight hand over to Subodh on this front. So my speaker today is Subodh Sohani. Many of the people who have joined, I see the names here. They know him personally very well. Some of them have been already trained or have looked at his knowledge of DevOps for some time already. Subodh has been MVP for many, many years. He is Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. He is Microsoft Certified Trainer as well. He is a DevOps, Azure DevOps Engineer expert. He is a Scrum Master himself and has involved in, in ALM assessments, the DevOps, Azure DevOps assessments for many, many years. He is a known authority in DevOps, and we're very happy to have him talking to us today on this. I'm Girish. I have kept my role minimum here as a moderator, and you will see that how minimal that is. I am a chief evangelist at e-Zest, and I also head the Microsoft Technology Center for Excellence here. I tweet at Girish Protein. That's my Twitter handle. Very quick one about e-Zest. Some of you know already. We are 20 years in business. We work on multitude of technologies. We are born in cloud, have been working on a lot of cloud stuff. We're based out of Pune here in India, and we got offices in Hanover in Germany, Detroit in USA, Chicago, Dallas, and we recently opened offices in Vienna in Austria. We have a palette of services that we offer on e-Zest. We can go next slide, Subodh. Those include DevOps assessment, enabling companies and teams on DevOps, helping them on migrations, from the legacies to cloud-based DevOps systems, helping them on tools, reports, development, and providing the managed support on that front. Right, so these are different things that we help our customers with. And with this, I will invite Subodh to talk on the topic of the day, which is DevOps, especially that has become critical in the times of COVID-19 situation where all of us are working from home, working as distributed teams. So revisiting those concepts, insisting on the basics of those concepts and taking it from there has become critically important. So I now hand it over to Subodh to take it. I hope everyone is doing safe, fine, well, and taking care of themselves. All right. So Subodh, to you.
Thank you very much, Girish. It has been very nice to be here with you. And thank you again for being so kind to introduce me in very nice words. Thank you very much. So our today's topic is to do with DevOps, but a little bit offline. That how does the DevOps provide the answers or the solutions to the challenges which we are facing, the industry is facing. So let me restate this statement of the slide a little bit. So what I'm going to talk about is challenges which the enterprises are facing due to work from home specifically. When we say remote working, it is work from home, and how the various processes of DevOps are going to provide the solutions. And we already have seen some of those processes very nicely implemented by some of our customers to give the answers to the work from home and remote working. So today our session will be in this fashion. So we'll begin with the details of the challenges. What challenges are the enterprises facing due to remote working or work from home? Then in general, what are the solutions which are offered, which may or may not be related to DevOps? And then we will take a very brief overview of the DevOps concepts. I'm not going to go into the details because just for this topic of the DevOps concepts, I can speak for almost 4 hours on that. But I'm not going to do that. It will be just a very 30,000 feet overview of DevOps. What we are going to drill down into is specifically Azure DevOps, which is Microsoft's offering for the various tools related to DevOps. And then how the various Azure services, including Azure DevOps, provides the solution that we will end. So I'm going to talk a little more on the last part. I'll go into a couple of case studies, how we have solved the problems that the customers were facing. Okay, so this is about how the roadmap, today's roadmap of how we will be going to the work. Okay, so what are the challenges which are faced by the enterprises due to the remote working, due to work from home? Now, I categorize those into three different groups. These are the challenges which have come to my notice. The customers have brought them to my notice. They wanted the solutions for that. And as and when we go about, I'll also tell you about those cases where we had to provide a solution for various problems due to the work from home that enterprises were facing. So the first one is infrastructure management. There are various issues which we face usually in a normal circumstances. The infrastructure management is provisioning the various environments like the dev environment, test environment, and the probably even the production environment. And provisioning that on a physical machine is quite simple. People are sitting there, there are desktops and laptops on their table, and they just connect to the various servers, and they do the provisioning of the hardware, updating the software, or checking the availability of the application and taking the appropriate actions. So all those things are done very easily when it is the normal situation. And one more thing about it is in the infrastructure, one of the very important resource is bandwidth. And there is no limit on the bandwidth when you are in the office because you are in the local area network. There is no limit, and that does give the excellent speed as well as the time, and all those things are absolutely phenomenal. So there is no limit on that. So this is how or what happens normally. But then due to the COVID-19 as well as many other situations, even before COVID-19, people were thinking about working from home, or rather allowing their employees to work from home. So in that case, when we are working remotely, when there is nobody in the office, literally nobody, then what are the issues which we come across? One of the major issues we come across is the provisioning and maintenance. The environments which are created need to be refreshed time to time, like the dev environment or test environment. We need to deploy software, and even prior to deploying the software, we need to refresh the operating system or various folders in that, and all kinds of resetting may be needed to be done. Now, this is very easily done when somebody is there in the office and there is a direct access to various servers. But when there is nobody there, what happens? Now, one of the case where a customer brought a problem to me, and that was related to Team Foundation server. Their Team Foundation server had stopped working due to some reason. That Team Foundation server was in the office, and there was nobody in the office. So they wanted to reset that Team Foundation server. But their problem was that, okay, it happened once, so they could send someone to reset it. But in the lockdown and various containment zones and all, it becomes difficult, if not impossible, for continuously provision and maintain various hardware and software. Now, it of course is possible. Now, another customer found out a solution that, okay, if we have a VPN, so using the VPN, there are various people were connecting to their regular machines in the office using certain laptop computers which they had rented. So those rented laptops they were using to connect to their office using RDP, and then running their regular software on the machines which were in the office. Through RDP, they were getting only the user interface for those machines, and actual machines were in the office. They were using certain low-end computers for accessing those machines in the office. But then they realized that the there is a bottleneck of bandwidth in the VPN. So when they were connecting all the, say about 100 people connecting to their office simultaneously for doing a lot of RDP sessions, they realized that the bandwidth was not sufficient at the office end. Usually we take for granted that the last mile will be a limitation, but here it was working out otherwise. Since there were so many people trying to connect at the same time, the bandwidth was not sufficient. Then they thought of providing high-end computers to their developers and testers so that they can connect directly to the TFS or some other servers and from their work. But then that's a very costly thing. It costs so much for renting such high-end computers that their organization after 15 days or a month's time started rethinking and came to me what we should do now, that we have to give our developers only low-end computers because that's what is affordable, but still we want to access our computers at the office and there is a limitation. So these are the problems which our customers have faced in the infrastructure management remotely. So this is one bucket of problems. Another is in the communication and collaboration. So the team has to communicate within. The team members have to communicate for knowing the changes in requirements and lots of other things related to the status of the project, of various entities which are related to the project. And not only that, they have to help each other out. When they are in the office, they are just sitting across the aisle and they can just go and ask for help and get help. They may do a stand-up meeting somewhere. So helping each other is a very important part of the day-to-day life of the developers and the other team members. They have to get the status of all the things related like requirements, tasks, tests, and lots of other things continuously. They have to get that. Now, when we are working somewhere which is not in the office, maybe from home, maybe from some other place, then we need to depend on the out-of-band communication. So there is a necessity for having a third-party software and using that time to time for communicating within the team itself. And this out-of-band communication is working out to be very costly. You must have heard recently that there are now spatial rates which the mobile companies and other providers have started charging for the out-of-band communication using certain softwares, which I don't want to name, but using certain softwares, it has become much more costlier compared to what it used to be. It's their day, of course. They will charge us as much as they can. So this is another bucket of problems, which is communication and collaboration related. The last and the most important, in my opinion, is the security of the intellectual property. There is a code which we develop, and that code for the organization is the most important intellectual property that we are creating. If that code gets somehow pilferaged, which there is a big chance that it will happen, it becomes loss to the company, because they have not only lost their software, they have also lost the ideas which are very important, and those ideas which are yet to be implemented into the product can become a hazard for the organization's survival. So the code is important. The released and deployable software is important, like the binaries and scripts and configuration files and lots of such things which are important. And the documents also are going to be important, which we need to secure. But the most important here, which I want to focus on, is the code. If a code is to be given to the developer at home, who is going to guarantee that the developer is not going to create a copy of that and share it with some competitor at some price? Some of my colleagues had an opinion that if you hire good people, treat them well, pay them well, then in that case, they are least likely to do such a thing. But then, can you take a risk in that? Can you have people working from home and having access to the entire code base, and they may not succumb to certain attractions? So that's going to be a very tricky issue, and has to be handled very securely by the organizations. So that's the third bucket of issues and challenges that the organizations are facing. So what is the solution for that? What is the solution which we can implement without much cost, without having to pay, but at the same time, all the issues or the challenges which we are facing will be addressed in that. And for that, generically, without saying anything about DevOps or Azure or anything, let me say that very surely there are two things which we have to do, which are automation. Automation is implementation of whatever tools and scripts to do the things like build, provisioning of the hardware and software, deployment of the build assemblies, testing of those build software, and very importantly, monitoring the health of the application. Monitoring the health is important because we need to know when we are not there in the office. We need to know continuously, and we should get the alerts about that, about whether the application is available or not, whether the application is performing well or not. And based on that, there should be certain actions which should be taken, corrective actions which should be taken. Another driver for this solution is the cloud. I'm not saying Azure only, but of course, everyone knows my tendency towards Azure. Being a Microsoft MVP, certainly I will be talking a lot about Microsoft Azure. So Azure and any cloud in that case, we can provision the infrastructure for environments in the cloud without having direct access or physical access to the data centers. We can do all the provisioning, we can maintain our hardware, maintain our software, and in that, the cloud provider, of course, is going to help us a lot. Without physically being there, we can reset the machines, we can restart the machines, we can start deployment of some prerequisites or deploy our own software. So that's the first aspect of cloud. Second is, cloud offers us the services for communication and collaboration. The software like Microsoft Teams will allow us the in-process communication without going out of the software which we are using for developing our code. We can communicate, collaborate with each other, and it still does not cost you the hell. And that's a good thing. Third thing is, cloud also provides us the automation tools. Automation tools which will allow us to gather the data, to monitor various aspects of it, automation tools for all those things which I am mentioning on the left hand side are provided in the cloud, and we can also take automated actions based on the data which is collected. So in my opinion, these two, automation and cloud, which go hand in hand, of course, are going to provide us the solution for these issues. Now we come to the DevOps. Where does DevOps fit into uh, that aspects which I mentioned, cloud and automation? Now DevOps, as you may have read somewhere or heard, is based on three pillars. Mindset, which is a very important thing, where entire team, which includes right from the business people to the person who is going to do the build and release or deploy or even testing, everybody should have a mindset to do the early and frequent delivery. Early and frequent delivery is something which is a promise made by Agile, which is never fulfilled. And that is fulfilled by DevOps. The mindset is important. But today, I'm not going to talk much about the mindset, although it is important, as I said, because mindset is important anyway, whether it is working in the office or whether it is working remotely, working from home, it is still going to be the most important thing. So this is not today's subject. So that's why I'm going to focus more on automation, where minimum manual intervention should be sufficient for doing all the necessary things like provisioning and monitoring and deployment and all those things. And the automation is not something just happens. It needs tools to support that automation. So we are going to also see certain tools, not only Azure DevOps, of course Azure DevOps, but also certain other tools to support the automation which we require. Okay, so let me begin with Agile practices. Now, why you will say Agile practices? Because the most of the teams today will be quite conversant with the Agile practices, principles, and the way we work in Agile. So we
So
have,
Subodh, I want to raise one question.
yes, please.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I know you would perhaps answer that here. And
yeah.
many people, when I published this webinar, came up with this,
Mhm.
asking what's the difference between Agile and DevOps, and how do we put that line, and how that is needed. So I'm sure you would cover when you talk about that, right?
Absolutely right. And it's a
Okay.
great question, Girish. Thank you very much for raising this, because not many people understand what is the difference between Agile and DevOps. Many of the people who are working in the industry have now become conversant with the Agile. They know what is Agile. It's an iterative development which happens, and where change is always not only expected, but it is encouraged, so that we give to the customer whatever the customer needs at this moment, not what the customer needed maybe 6 months back. So it's excellent. But what is the difference between Agile and DevOps? Okay, let me take you to the next slide, which is going to answer that. So that's why I say that this was an excellent question, because you anticipated actually what I'm going to talk about. And that's why. Okay, so Agile is limited to the development processes, development of the software based on certain requirements. And that's it. It is, of course, iterative model and all those things, but it still limits itself only to the development. What we have seen is that Agile promises early and frequent delivery, but does not deliver it always. It always is a promise which is unfulfilled. Why? Because the delivery of the software is not only development of the software. The development is only one part of the software delivery, whereas there are so many other aspects of uh, the operations which are part of the delivery of the software. Like provisioning of the hardware, software so that it is ready before we make the deployment, actual deployment of the software onto the various servers and various devices, testing that and giving the feedback to the development team that something is working, not working, and not working up to the standard. And very importantly, monitoring the health of the application, including the environment, to know whether we need to do certain take certain corrective action or not. So it goes much beyond only development to deliver the software, and a team which is developing a software, if they also include the members who are going to do these provisioning, deployment, feedback and testing, health monitoring, and also the business people who are going to give the raw requirements, it all is going to then ensure that it will fulfill the dream and the promise which is made by Agile, which is early and frequent delivery to the customer for the for certain increments of the software which are created. And that is DevOps. So if you ask me definition of DevOps, I can't put it in the words. You will find the definitions of the DevOps in the wiki and all. There are a lot of definitions, but in my opinion, the definition of the DevOps is extending Agile to the operations for these things like provisioning, deployment, health monitoring, and of course testing also. That is DevOps. So does that answer your question, Girish?
Yes, and that also creates one more question which we'll ask, once you come there,
Okay.
about should there be a DevOps position in an organization? So fair enough, but I think I know, because I asked first question, you're going to answer this as well. What should be the job description?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
so that's
you're in the
good,
flow, and I'm sure you will pick it up.
That's a good point which you have raised. Many organizations, in fact, advertise a job opening for DevOps engineers. I say there is nothing like DevOps engineer. There's a DevOps team, which includes all the roles which are mentioned here for doing the development, for doing the operations like provisioning, deployment, for doing testing, the business people like who will analyze the business, come out with the new requirements and put it into the product backlog. All these roles put together becomes a team which is called a DevOps team. There is no one role which is called DevOps. Now, this misconception came into being because in the earlier days, it was thought that DevOps is continuous integration, continuous deployment. That's it, which is only a small part of DevOps. And a person who knows how to do CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, people thought that, okay, he or she is the DevOps engineer. But no, that's a misconception. There is no job designation or a post like a DevOps engineer. There should not be. If an organization or an enterprise is saying that we have a position open for DevOps engineer, I say that they have not understood the essence of DevOps. The concept of DevOps is not properly understood by them. Okay. I mean, this is my opinion, and this is, of course, shared with many of the MVPs in the DevOps field. But then there can be other opinions, and I don't want to comment on big organizations who advertise on them, but I do, in my mind, I laugh at them. Does that answer your question, Girish, again? Great. Okay. So DevOps is all about the delivery of the software frequently, early and frequently. So how is it going to give us the various parts of it? Using certain tools, we can achieve these things. And I have just marked the tools with various colors. So there is a tool like Azure DevOps, which provides us the services related to the agile management, managing the product backlog and agile planning for sprint backlog and the task boards and the burn down chart and all those things. It does provide us tools to do the builds, for doing the code reviews, provisioning of the hardware and software, deployment, testing. All these are provided by Azure DevOps. The coding and unit testing, which is part of coding in my mind, it doesn't really differ much. So coding and unit testing has to be handled differently. I will come back to that later on, what and how in the situation we are in should we handle that. And the last part is health monitoring. The health monitoring is handled by the various Azure services like the Azure Monitor, which is divided into two parts. One is log analytics, and the second part is application insights. So we will study or learn about those a little bit in short later on through a case study. So these are the various tools which are provided by Azure DevOps. There are Azure boards. Azure boards allow us to collaborate from anywhere. Now, our focus in today's session is we should be able to work from anywhere. So Azure DevOps is a software or a set of services which are available in the cloud and accessible through the browser. So if you look at it, you can see that the boards are available in the browser. Various version control facilities are available through the browser. Build is available through the browser, release is browser based, and even the testing is browser based. So this gives us a browser-based solution for all the services which are necessary, and that makes it accessible from anywhere in the internet. So a person may be sitting at home and still can collaborate with the team members within the software without going out of band and still effectively communicate with each other. Version control, which is provided by Azure DevOps, is also accessible from anywhere. You can access it using the internet, and it also provides another facility which is called distributed repository. So our need for communicating and getting connected continuously reduces dramatically by almost 90%. It's only 10% of the time we need to be connected for doing certain operations of the version control. Now, for the build, Azure DevOps provides multiple factors. First one is that it provides the infrastructure to run the build on. So you don't need to have a build server, which is a big thing in usual organizations. We don't need the build servers. We don't need any special software to be installed for doing the build. And we can still have the continuous integration with the hardware which is made available to us in the cloud by Azure DevOps. And that same hardware is also used for doing the deployment through the same agent. We can do the continuous deployment. The entire process of provisioning, which is creating the same hardware again and again. Many of you, or I would say almost all of you, may be new to this word name called idempotency. And this word indicates that as many times as I recreate the hardware, it should be exactly same. Using the ARM templates in Azure, we can effectively again and again and again create the resources which are exactly same as earlier time. So Provisioning becomes automated and easy using certain templates. And then we can do the deployment also automatically onto that using Azure DevOps. There is, of course, a workflow of approval which is manual, which of course should not be automated to a larger extent. There should be an approval given by a human being for uh, going forward or stopping somewhere where something is going wrong. Then we can also do testing automatically. Automation testing is available through the browser in Azure DevOps. Of course, it requires us to pay a little bit extra for the testing facility, but it is available. And the number of testers within the team can use that for doing the test case management as well as the test execution. Automation of the health monitoring is something which Azure DevOps does not do directly, but depends upon Azure Monitor for its alerts and log analytics and application insights. Let me show you a case of that. The first case is where we want that the application is deployed onto certain Azure infrastructure like a virtual machine, or it is hosted on the IIS server on the virtual machine. What we want is that if something is going wrong, some availability is going down or the performance is going down, we want certain action to be taken automatically without a person being involved, so that if nobody is in the office also, no, not an issue. It's not going to be a problem at all. So the Azure infrastructure can be enabled through the monitoring of the infrastructure can be enabled through log analytics, and certain performance counters as well as the availability of the application will be informed to the Azure Monitor, which is the log analytics or application insights. We can set certain rules and thresholds. Like, for example, the person processor load should never go for more than 5 minutes above 80%. If it goes above that, we want that certain action should be taken. And the alert is raised by the Azure Monitor, and immediately it triggers a runbook on the Azure Automation service. In our Azure Automation account, that runbook can be a PowerShell script, or it can be a Python script or any such script, which will be automatically executed. What does it do? It just goes and restarts the virtual machine or resets IIS or do anything which will take the corrective action. These two are just the examples. But you can see here, it's a continuous loop in which there is no manual intervention required. Nobody to be sitting there in the office and monitoring the performance as well as the availability. Nobody to raise an alert, an email, nobody to take the action on that. And still everything happens automatically, continuously. So this is one example of using the Azure DevOps as well as Azure Monitor, Azure Automation for continuously taking the care of our applications, which are deployed on the Azure infrastructure. Another case which I want to show is of the application which we have already deployed, and we want to monitor the health of the application in the fashion that we want to check the availability. It should never go below certain limit, say 70% or 80% or 90%. And at the same time, we also want to monitor the performance of the application. Now, what is the difference between the earlier case which I showed you and this one? The earlier case included the environment on which the application was deployed. Here, we are not taking into account that. We are just purely considering the application's performance, which will indirectly depend on the environment, of course. So application insights is one of the parts of the Azure Monitor, which will keep on monitoring this, raise the alerts. In fact, it can even create the bug in Azure DevOps if something goes wrong. So let's say if the availability goes below 30% or 80% of whatever limit which you have set, it will automatically create a bug in your project in Azure DevOps so that you will come to know and you will take immediate action on that. The data which is collected by application insights is also available to the log analytics. So we can create various queries on that and run those queries time to time to get insights into and analyze data in the form of reports into the application insights. So application insights is also a service which is offered by Azure, which integrates quite well with Azure DevOps. So this is another case which I wanted to show you. So these two ensure that the monitoring, health check, and the automated actions do take place time to time without any manual intervention. We come to the last part of the Azure DevOps, and that is integrated communication. There, of course, is a direct inline way of communication, which I showed you earlier through the boards and all those things which are available. In addition to that, Azure DevOps integrates very well with Microsoft Teams for the team members to communicate with each other, video, chat, and all the factors which are required for doing the communication with each other are there, and it integrates with the Azure DevOps very well. I come to one of the most important parts of my presentation today, and that is how do we control the access to our code, which is our intellectual property. Now our code, let's assume, is in the Azure DevOps under the version control service of the Azure DevOps. And in the situation which we are in now, it will be, of course, accessed from the client, which is at home computer, which may or may not be the organization's computer. And what we want is that anybody should not be able to get the code from Azure DevOps version control onto this client, because this client machine is uncontrolled. Anybody can copy and share the code or take it away somewhere, and that is what we want to avoid. Now, if you want to avoid that, we need to take help of various Azure services. The first and foremost, one of the most important service is the Azure Active Directory service. It implements a security boundary for our organization. It's a boundary which enforces that nobody from the outside can access our resources. So this is the first one. It also provides us certain other services, which I will come to. We create a organizational VNet, virtual network, within Azure. So now there are number of virtual machines which are shareable virtual machines shared between multiple developers at the same time. And those virtual machines are the only ones which can access the Azure DevOps code. This is made possible by one of the services of Azure Active Directory, which is called conditional access. The entire network is represented by a gateway. It has a public IP, and that's the only IP which is allowed to access our code, which is under the Azure DevOps. Okay, now we have the software which is installed on these virtual machines like Visual Studio or Visual Code or whatever which you are using. Through that, you can connect to Azure DevOps and get the code. And from this machine, which is at home of a developer or a tester, the code is accessible through RDP only. This RDP allows the user to access a virtual machine. Now, this does not have the bandwidth problem which I mentioned earlier about, which is the MVP the VPN boundary. And it provides excellent communication because this is in the cloud. This is in cloud, and there is only one person which is connecting to it at the time. It becomes an excellent connection, and the RDP screen is shown on this cloud. What about copy paste from this virtual machine to the regular this physical machine? Of course, we can prevent that. There are certain policies which we can set, group policies which we can set, and by that we can prevent any copy paste from happening between these two computers. This is a virtual machine, this is a physical machine. And we can also set certain proxy settings, so no other site will be available from these virtual machines like Dropbox or OneDrive or all. They will be out of bound for these virtual machines. So nobody can copy and paste it somewhere else or send a copy of that to a client. So this is how we can make a control our access to the code which is here, which is the most important intellectual property, is now very secure, and nobody, including the developers, can also directly copy it on their machines. So this is a case, and let me tell you that this we have implemented at at least 3 different customers, and they are very happy with it. So this gives us a chance for controlling or protecting our intellectual property. So in conclusion, what are the benefits of DevOps in the current situation of work from home? First of all, DevOps is an integration of all roles in the team. It gives us the fulfillment of the promise which I mentioned earlier, early and frequent delivery. It also improves the profitability of the organization by improved productivity of the team, whether the team members are sitting in the office or in different places at their home. It also improves the quality of product because it provides us various ways by which we can do the testing continuously. And now if we come to the Azure DevOps, of course, it is a SaaS, software as a service, offered by Microsoft for all things DevOps. I say that it provides us the continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous testing, and continuous monitoring. It's everything which is related to DevOps. So all the benefits which I mentioned earlier, like improved profitability, which is the biggest one, and high customer satisfaction due to the early and frequent delivery, is achievable through various services which are created by Azure DevOps. It works from cloud. Everything is in the cloud, including the various environments which are required for testing, for development, for various storage, like the code storage and the storage of the binaries which are created. It's very secure. It's a role-based access control plus encrypted communication plus encrypted data storage gives us through and through security. It integrates excellently with Azure Monitor, Azure Resource Manager, Azure Automation, all the services of Azure. For remote working, this becomes very important and essential. And most importantly for various customers, it is technology agnostic. It doesn't really matter in which technology you're working, whether it is .NET, .NET Core, Java, JavaScript, Perl or Python or whatever. It doesn't really matter. You can work in your choice of technology and still leverage all these facilities and benefits which are given by Azure DevOps. So this brings me to the end of the planned session. But then I'm open to any questions that you may have, and I'll be very happy to answer those questions. So I now
Sure.
Hold the call to you so that you can now start asking questions.
Sure. So we had asked people to share the questions either in the chat window or personally to me as well. One of the questions that has come from attendee Umang is how you measure the business outcomes, okay? Or how, because we have a mixed audience here, some of the audience is actually using and benefiting from DevOps in their day-to-day lives, and others who are taking decisions on either tools and technologies or moving to the way you just explained.
Great.
So, and based on multiple experiences that you have, how you help in arriving at that conclusion that, hey, this is the right approach from business point of view.
Okay, so here, if you see the DevOps benefits which I have mentioned, the first one is a partial goal of the organization. The goal of the organization fully is in the profitability of the organization. We should be in the profit. We are doing business. If it is a business, it has to run profitably. There is no way and no chance that we do business in loss. There may be a case where we may have an intentional loss for certain strategic reason, but that's a different thing. Overall, organization has to be profitable. Now, what does the profitability depend upon? It depends on three things, out of which two are in our control. The first one, which is not in our control, is that we should have a market which is the potential market and the share out of that. But keeping it aside, because that's a totally different issue, which is something which goes beyond our control. What we can control is the improved productivity of the team. If same people can develop and deliver much more than what today they are doing, it is certainly going to be profitable to the organization.
Okay.
Whereas, second part is the improved quality of product. So here the cost may not reduce. Cost may sometimes in fact increase. We have seen that.
Okay.
But it still becomes a factor by which we grab a bigger share of the market potential, by which we can get a better profitability, because then we are into the more lucrative businesses. So both of these are facilitated and uh, given to us on the platter by DevOps. It improves the productivity of the team, and we have measured it various organizations, including the big organizations like Infosys, Wipro, and TCS, and Cognizant, and many other, as well as to even the in the small organizations of only 30 people or so. Everywhere, adoption of the DevOps to become the DevOps teams has improved the productivity of the team by minimum 10 to 12% to about 30% in my, in wherever I have gone and done the uh, DevOps implementations, assessment and implementation.
Perfect. Yeah. Go ahead.
The first part, which is fulfillment of of the agile promise, is a partial goal, because we are interested in keeping the customer satisfied. Yes, of course, but that is a goal which is to achieve some other goal, and that is profitability. If keeping the customer happy, satisfied is not going to give us the profitability, leave that goal, leave that part of the customer's business. We are not interested in that. Okay.
Great. Sure. Thank you. I'm just taking questions quickly.
Yeah, please.
There is a question from Sandeep who asks, in fact, there are two questions, maybe they're interlinked. You can figure those out. Does DevOps still align with ITIL processes, synonymous to ops or traditionally synonymous to ops? And it would be useful to give some insights on best practices of DevOps. Yeah, at e-Zest that we follow, of course. Yeah.
All right. So DevOps is not a formal framework like ITIL or Scrum. DevOps is a way of working, a mindset for the organization to have, and certainly for the teams to have. So it doesn't have any defined practices. Agile still has some practices which are kind of approved practices by the various experts.
Mhm.
Fortunately, DevOps is not has not fallen into that trap of following certain practices only.
Okay.
DevOps is open for interpretation. What is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is for the early and frequent delivery by the entire team. Here we come to the best practices of the DevOps. The first best practice is to have a single mindset of the entire team. There should not be tug of war between the developers and testers, between the developers and the operations people. It is a single goal that the entire team has to have, and their mindset has to be early and frequent delivery. And I will add a couple of words to that, without losing on the quality. So that should be the mindset. Bringing this mindset is difficult, but not impossible.
Mhm.
Second practice which should be followed, which is for achieving this first goal, is to have the continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous testing, and continuous monitoring. The third best practice, I'll limit myself to only three, of course. The third best practice is to always have the practices which ensure quality through the built-in processes. It should not be an afterthought. Rajendra sir will agree, I saw his name somewhere earlier, so he will agree with me that quality should never be an afterthought. Quality should always be something which is by design, and it should be built into the processes. So these are my three best practices related to DevOps, I would say. Top three.
Sure.
There are so many
Great.
there, of course.
Absolutely. No, I'm sure. Looking at the time, I think you summarized it really
Correct.
well.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to pick the last question here. Want to close in next 3 minutes.
Yeah.
There's a question that I got from Ranit. I think he's joined us from Amsterdam, and
Yeah.
hope he's keeping safe and fine there. Does DevOps model fits where there are multiple teams working on big projects in large organizations and have dependencies on each other?
Absolutely. This is a great question. Of course, product development, of course, is always a multiple teams efforts, unless it is a very trivial product.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, the scaled agile is what we have always suggested. Of course, you can have different frameworks for scaling the agile, but DevOps finally is extension of agile to the operations team. And exactly same model, same framework can be extended for the operations as well as the agile model of the development. So we can have multiple teams following DevOps or being the DevOps teams. I never say that you implement DevOps. My words always have been be DevOps, be a DevOps team. So a DevOps team is possible to be integrated with the others for dependencies and other interactions. And you can follow Nexus, you can follow Scaled Agile, whatever you want to, but it still becomes the multiple DevOps teams which are interacting with each other.
Okay.
Very well.
Perfect. No, thank you. I think I wanted to close in next 30 seconds, but
Yeah.
there is one question that has come. I think you can address that quickly if you can.
Yeah, sure. I
That
will
is, yeah. You said that DevOps does not allow a set of practices and its use is left to the interpretation of user. In my
Yes.
experience, agile prescribed practices are not followed
Yeah.
to the extent which makes the implementation of agile processes, basically it makes it fragile, okay, than agile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you then think there should be a set of prescribed practices to implement that? Okay.
No.
So I think I'm going to take this as the last question.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got like a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. So my question is, my answer is very simple to that, and that is, I hope that there never is a set of prescribed practices for DevOps. We should have full freedom to be a DevOps team without following any specific framework or a set of practices. It should be left to the organization and the team at both the levels to define their own practices, follow them. What we have to keep in mind is the mindset, which is early, frequent delivery without losing the focus of quality. And finally, which will will give us the higher productivity and higher quality to give us the profitability.
Okay, sure. Thank you. A super last question. Is there any configuration where users or the person would get notified whenever the build completed or filled or filed? Yeah.
So this question, I believe, is specific to Azure DevOps. And yes, there, of course, is a facility by which every event which happens can be notified through an email, like the build completes or somebody checks in the code or somebody approves your request for code review or somebody deploys a software, everything. It's a very rich interface, and yeah, you can
sure.
get
Okay.
notifications.
Thanks for that. There's one question which I will address. Does any other company provide DevOps services like this? I said we do the best. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Subodh. Thanks a lot for coming on to the call today, and everyone who joined us today from different parts of the world. I see some people joined from US and Europe and our time zones. Thank you so much. For the lack of time, we may not be able to take more questions here. But you know how to reach us. Please send your questions and we'll definitely try and address those. Thank you, Subodh, again. Thank you, the team that managed this for today. Apologies how it started on slightly challenging note, but I think we all has gone through well. Thank you. Thanks again. And we'll come with the next series of webinars soon and we'll notify you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Girish. Thank you, team who are managing this entire webcast. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.